Well, hello again, everyone. This is Dr. Bev Knox, your psychology exam study buddy. How are you doing today? I hope you are doing wonderful. Alrighty, this is our episode for the questions and answers for intelligence and IQ scores. And like I like to keep saying over and over, I want you to rehearse and listen to this information over and over again to transfer this information into your long-term memory. This is going to help you to ace your psychology exam. This is episode 21, and on episode 20, we went over the theory of different intelligence scores, tests, and different applications. Now, let's dive right into it. Experts would most likely agree that intelligence is a mental ability to learn from experience. Experts would most likely agree that intelligence is a mental ability to learn from experience. What is intelligence? That's right. Intelligence is most likely mental ability to learn from experience. Psychologists use intelligence tests to assess individuals' mental aptitudes and compare them with those of others. Psychologists use intelligence tests, that's right, to assess individuals' mental aptitudes. And what do they do with it? Compare them with those of others. Wonderful. Okay, next. Spearman's G factor refers to a general intelligence that underlies successful performance on a wide variety of tasks. Spearman's G factor refers to a general intelligence, and in our last episode, I gave you 3 different theorists, and I told you just remember these key terms, and you will get it correct on the exam. So for Spearman, you got to remember general intelligence. Spearman, general intelligence. Okay, all right. Spearman's G factor refers to a general intelligence that underlies successful performance on a wide variety of tasks. And you are to associate Spearman with what? Very good. General intelligence. Factor analysis is a statistical procedure that can be used to identify clusters of closely related test items. To assess whether intelligence is a single trait or a collection of several distinct abilities, psychologists have made extensive use of factor analysis. People with savant syndrome are best described as those who demonstrate an exceptional specific skill. People with savant syndrome are best described as those who demonstrate an exceptional specific skill. Howard Gardner identified a total of 8 intelligences. And that's one of the other very important names that I told you to remember. So with Howard Gardner, you want to associate that name with, of course, Gardner's multiple intelligence theory. Okay? So Howard Gardner identified a total of 8 different types of intelligences. Those who define intelligence as academic aptitude are most likely to criticize Gardner's concept of multiple intelligences. Howard Gardner is most likely to agree that the concept of intelligence includes spatially analyzing visual input. By demonstrating both intelligence and grit, highly successful people demonstrate the importance of both ability and motivation. By demonstrating both intelligence and grit, highly successful people demonstrate the importance of both ability and motivation. Next, Robert Sternberg distinguished among analytical, practical, and creative intelligence. That's right. Robert Sternberg distinguished among analytical, practical, and creative intelligence. Now, again, this is another very important name for you to remember, Sternberg. Okay? So what is the 3 names? Do you remember the 3 names that I spoke of in the last episode? I told you have to remember these names. Spearman, that's right. And Spearman was all about what? General intelligence. Very good. So Spearman is general intelligence. Howard Gardner is what? Multiple intelligence theory. Look at you. Excellent. And how many different types of intelligences? 8. And in some, books, you'll see that there is a 9th one. But for psychology exams, they mostly speak of 8 types of intelligences according to Gardner. Okay? Now, who's the 3rd person? Sternberg. Okay? So you have Howard Gardner, Spearman, and now you have Robert Sternberg. And Robert Sternberg talks about 3 types of intelligences, focusing on analytical, practical, and creative intelligence. Okay? Alrighty, let's see. Next, the ability to produce novel and valuable ideas is called creativity. The ability to produce novel and valuable ideas is called creativity. Generating multiple possible answers to a problem illustrates divergent thinking. Generating multiple possible answers to a problem illustrate divergent thinking. Next, intrinsic motivation is thought to be an important component of creativity. Intrinsic motivation is thought to be an important component of creativity. The most creative scientists are those who are intrinsically motivated to solve problems. The most creative scientists are those who are intrinsically motivated to solve problems. Allowing time for complex ideas to incubate outside of conscious awareness is most likely to promote creativity. Allowing time for complex ideas to incubate outside of conscious awareness is most likely to promote creativity. Next, an important aspect of social intelligence is called emotional intelligence. An important aspect of social intelligence is called emotional intelligence. The ability to delay immediate pleasures in pursuit of long-range rewards is most clearly a characteristic of emotional intelligence. The ability to delay immediate pleasures in pursuit of long-range rewards is most clearly a characteristic of emotional intelligence. The concept of emotional intelligence is most likely to be criticized for extending the definition of intelligence to an overly broad range of skills. The concept of emotional intelligence is most likely to be criticized for extending the definition of intelligence to an overtly broad range of skills. Efficient communication between brain centers requires ample white matter containing axons. Studies suggest that there is a positive correlation between intelligence and the brain's ability to quickly perceive a simple visual stimulus. Studies suggest that there is a positive correlation between intelligence and the brain's ability to what? Quickly perceive a simple visual stimulus. Which procedure is used to identify different dimensions of performance that underlie people's intelligence scores? Factor analysis. Who would have been most enthusiastic about the value of a single intelligence test score as an index of an individual's mental capacity? Who would it be? Sperman. That's right, Charles Sperman. The characteristics of savant syndrome is directly suggests that intelligence is a diverse set of distinct abilities. Very good. All right, let's see. Managers who want to foster creativity in the workplace should try to increase the intrinsic motivation of their employees. Superior performance on an intelligence test is most likely to be indicative of Sternberg's concept of analytical intelligence. Superior performance on an intelligence test is most likely to be indicative of Sternberg's concept of analytical intelligence. All right, let's move on. When Andy becomes upset about getting a poor grade, he typically fails to realize that he feels scared. This lack of self-insight best illustrates an inadequate level of emotional intelligence. When Andy becomes upset about getting a poor grade, he typically fails to realize that he feels scared. This lack of self-insight best illustrates an inadequate level of emotional intelligence. To learn whether intelligence is related to information processing speed, researchers have tested participants to determine how long it takes them to perceive briefly present visual images. Okay, let's move on. The concept of a G factor implies that intelligence is a single overall ability. The concept of a G factor implies that intelligence is a single overall ability. When highly skilled people are performing a task, their brains do all things at once, such as retrieve information from memory more quickly, register simple stimuli more quickly, and use less energy to solve problems. When highly skilled people are performing a task, their brains receive information from memory more quickly and register simple stimuli more quickly and use less energy to solve problems. Most experts view intelligence as a person's ability to learn from experience, solve problems, and adapt to new situations. Now that's the word right here I want you to look for. The word is adapt or adaptation. So when you are talking about current definitions of intelligence, you're always going to see that word adaptation in the definition, okay? So most experts view intelligence as a person's ability to learn from experience, solve problems, and adapt to new situations. In recent years, researchers are more likely than before to consider intelligence as made up of several abilities. The psychologist who has proposed that intelligence is composed of analytic, creative, and practical aspects is, that's right, Robert Sternberg. You remember that. So Robert Sternberg proposed that intelligence is composed of three things: analytical, creative, and practical. That's right. All right, so let's move on to assessing intelligence, okay? Psychologists use what to assess individuals' mental aptitudes? Psychologists use intelligence tests to assess individuals' mental aptitudes and compare them with those of others. The 19th century English scientist Sir Francis Galton believed that superior intelligence is biologically inherited. You got to know this, okay? Because we spoke of in the prior episode that there are some folks that believe that you were born with the natural abilities of intelligence or of other things. You are who you are because of your genetic makeup or biological influences. That would be the nature perspective. But you have others that believe, no, it has nothing to do with biological makeup or genetic factors. It's all about environmental influences, okay? So for this, and you have to be able to differentiate anything and everything. When you read something that talks about genetic inheritance, you know that's the nature perspective, okay? So the 19th century English scientist Sir Francis Galton believed that superior intelligence is biologically inherited. Now, would he have the nature or the nurture perspective on intelligence? That's right. You are so intelligent. You are so brilliant. That's right. It says here, he believed that intelligence is biologically inherited. That would be the nature perspective. Okay? Okay. Who attempted to access intellectual strengths by measuring muscular power, sensory acuity, and body proportions? Francis Galton. That's right. Okay, let's move on. To assess mental age, Binet and Simon measured children's reasoning skills. To assess mental age, they measured the children's reasoning skills. That's right. Who would have been the least enthusiastic about relying on eugenics for the importance of human intellectual functioning? Alfred Binet. That's right. Binet and Thurman would have been most likely to disagree about the extent to which intelligence is determined by hereditary. Now that's important, okay? So listen closely because I want you to answer whether or not Binet took the nature perspective or the nurture perspective, all right? Binet and Thurman would have been most likely to disagree about the extent to which intelligence is determined by hereditary. So if it's determined by hereditary, you know it's the nature perspective. If it's determined by environmental factors, you know it's what perspective? The nurture perspective. That's right. For the original version of the Sanford-Binet, IQ was defined as mental age divided by chronological age and multiplied by 100. For the original version of the Sanford-Binet, IQ was defined as mental age divided by chronological age and multiplied by 100. Okay. A 12-year-old who responded to the original Sanford-Binet with the proficiency typically of an average 9-year-old was said to have an IQ of 75. An IQ of 75. Now, at the bottom in the description, I have links to different learning video lectures that I've done in regards to IQ scores and intelligence. So I want you after this to make sure you look at the video on intelligence and IQ scores, because it go more in depth about IQ scores. Okay. 5-year-old boy Benji has an IQ of 120 on the original version of the Stanford Binet. His mental age is 6. 5-year-old Benji has an IQ score of 120 on the original version of the Stanford Binet. His mental age is 6. Okay, let's see. In the early 20th century, the U.S. government developed intelligence tests to evaluate newly arriving immigrants. Poor test scores among immigrants who were not of Anglo-Saxon heritage were attributed by some psychologists of that day to have innate mental inferiority. Yes, they did. Okay. Tests designed to predict ability to learn new skills are called aptitude tests. Tests designed to predict ability to learn new skills are called aptitude tests. A test of your capacity to learn to be an automobile mechanic would be considered what kind of test? Aptitude tests. Okay. Achievement tests are designed to do what? Achievement tests are designed to assess learned knowledge or skills. The written exam of a driver's license would most likely be considered what type of test? A written exam for a driver's license would most likely be considered an achievement test. Very good. Okay. Aptitude tests are to future performance, as achievement tests are to current competence. Aptitude tests are to future performance, as achievement tests are to current competence. Okay. The WAIS was initially created by David Wechsler. The WAIS was initially created by David Wechsler. In addition to an overall intelligence score, the WAIS provides separate scores for such skills as working memory. If a test is standardized, this means, what does it mean? If a test is standardized, this means that a person's test performance can be compared with that of a representative pre-test group. Once you hear standardized test or standardization, okay, you need to know that the scores that were calculated are going to be compared to a pre-tested group. Okay? The distribution of intelligence test scores in the general population forms a bell-shaped pattern. This pattern is called a normal curve. You got to know that one is definitely on my exams, okay? So the distribution of intelligence test scores is in the general population forms a bell-shaped pattern. So you've heard of the bell-shaped curve. Well, another name for the bell-shaped curve is called the normal curve. Okay. Let's see. Let's move on. The normal curve would represent the distribution of people in terms of a specific group. So it could be American women in terms of their physical heights, for example. That could be measured on that normal curve. Intelligence could be measured on a normal curve, and so on and so on. Okay, let's see. If a test yields consistent results every time it is used, it has a high degree of reliability. If a test yields consistent results every time it is used, it has a high degree of reliability. Okay, let's see. A test that measures or predicts what it is supposed to is said to have a high degree of validity. A test that measures or predicts what it is supposed to is said to have a high degree of validity. Comparing the academic performance of those whose scores are extremely low on intelligence tests with those scores that are extremely high is an effective way to highlight the test's validity. The correlation between academic success and intelligence test scores will be lowest if the computed for a group of individuals whose scores range between 85 and 115. Now, by the way, that is called the normal range of IQ scores, okay? 85 to 115 is the normal range. And the normal IQ score is 100. Remember that because you will see it on any, psychology exams that's talking about or referring to intelligence scores, right? So 100 is what? It's called a normal IQ score. But the normal range is 85 to 115. On that bell-shaped curve, you have 15-point intervals on that curve, with 100 being, right in the center, right in the middle. So 85 to 115 is considered the normal range. Okay? All right. Let's see. A group of people of very similar age who are participants in a longitudinal study. Do you remember what a longitudinal study is? We went over that in another episode. A study that's what? Conducted over time, right? So if it's about, certain people that were in kindergarten, they could, keep in contact or follow them throughout middle school and high school and even college. So a group of people of very similar age who are participants in a longitudinal study are called a cohort. They're called a cohort. Okay, the widely used American revision of Alfred Binet's original intelligence test was developed by Lewis Thurman. The widely used American revision of Alfred Binet's original intelligence test was developed by Lewis Thurman. And I know I mentioned this in the last episode, but when you're taking your exam, the name Binet, it's French, so it's pronounced Binet, but it's going to look on paper like Binet, B-I-N-E-T. So don't get that confused, okay? So it looks like Alfred Binet, B-I-N-E-T, but it's pronounced Binet. Okay, so the widely used American revision of Alfred Binet's original intelligence test was developed by Thurman, Lewis Thurman. All right. Now, if course exams assess a student's mastery of a representative sample of course material, they are said to have content validity. Comparing the intelligence test scores among people from distinct different age cohorts requires cross-sectional studies. Comparing the intelligence test scores among people from distinct different age cohorts requires cross-sectional studies. Okay, we're doing really good here. I'm proud of you. Okay, let's move on. The first modern test of intelligence was developed in France. The first modern test of intelligence was developed in France. A 6-year-old who responded to the original Sanford Binet with the proficiency typical of an average 9-year-old was said to have a mental age of 9. That's right. A 6-year-old, so the person's age is 6, okay? So a 6-year-old who responded to the original Sanford Binet with the proficiency typical of that of the average 9-year-old was said to have the mental age of 9. A score on the WAIS that is higher than all but 2% of all scores earns an intelligence score of 130. And that's something you have to remember. So on an intelligence in regards to the bell-shaped curve, I told you 100 is snap dab right in the middle is 100, and you go in 15-point intervals. Okay, 85 to 115 is that normal range, but from 130 and above, these are your gifted and talented people. Okay, so gifted and talented people is 130 and above, and that only is a representation of 2% of all scores. Okay, all right. University grades are used to assess the predictive validity of the SAT. University grades are used to assess the predictive validity of the SAT. Standardization refers to the process of defining meaningful scores relative to a representative pre-tested group. Standardization refers to the process of defining meaningful scores relative to a representative pre-tested group. Down syndrome is normally caused by an extra chromosome in the person's genetic makeup. Down syndrome is normally caused by an extra chromosome in the person's genetic makeup. Okay, let's keep it moving. Sorting children into gifted and non-gifted educational groups has all of these effects. It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. It increases social isolation between the groups and promotes racial segregation and prejudice. So according to research, sorting children into gifted and non-gifted education groups creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. It increases social isolation between groups and promotes racial segregation and prejudice. The bell-shaped distribution of intelligence scores in a general population is called a normal distribution. The major flaw in cross-sectional research is the virtual impossibility of selecting participants who are similar in every aspect except age. Speed of processing is most likely to decrease with age. Speed of processing is most likely to decrease with age. The basic mental abilities that go into learning and understanding any subject have been classified as fluid intelligence. The basic mental abilities that go into learning and understanding any subject have been classified as fluid intelligence. The test created by Alfred Binet was designed specifically to predict school performance in children. The test created by Alfred Binet was designed specifically to predict school performance in children. The formula for the intelligence quotient was devised by William Stern. Current intelligence tests compute an individual's intelligence score as the amount by which the test taker's performance deviates from the average performance of others of the same age. The accumulation of knowledge that comes about with education and experience has been classified as crystallized intelligence. The accumulation of knowledge that comes about with education and experience has been classified as crystallized intelligence. Over the past 80 years, college aptitude test scores have declined and WAIS scores have risen. Over the past 80 years, college aptitude test scores have declined and WAIS scores have risen. Okay, guys, this is it. We are done with this episode. I am so proud of you. Please listen to this over and over and over to transfer this information into your long-term memory. So this is episode 21, the questions and answers for intelligence. And the previous episode, episode 20, was the theory all about intelligence. What is intelligence and how do we assess intelligence? Well, thank you for hanging out with me, guys. I will see you in the next episode. Bye.